Hey, welcome, my friend Patrick Cleary.
Hey, Scott.
100% Humboldt. And you are all of that and then some.
I don't know about that. Some people might disagree. I wasn't born here.
That's okay. But you're local enough. I mean, Ferndale, I mean, you got to be there 200 years, don't you?
Oh,
Before you're really local.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say anything on the record on that.
Don't say that. We love you, Ferndale.
Yes, exactly.
Thanks for coming. Yeah, my friend called me an archivist of Humboldt and its people, and I like that. So that's part of our mission, and you seem to be the perfect guy. So how did Patrick Cleary get to Humboldt? Tell us about your journey.
Well, there was a point on the map called Patrick's Point.
Yeah.
And
it's right here.
Yeah. So if I decided if I was going to find a sign from the universe about where to move, that was it.
Wow. How did you learn about Patrick's Point? You just saw it on a map?
Okay. So slightly longer story. I was living in New York City, working on Wall Street, having my somewhat premature midlife crisis, and decided that it was, time to sort of move and start over and figure out what I wanted to do. And there were a number of factors, but there was a friend of mine, Jennifer Mackey, who at the time was living here in Humboldt, and she suggested that I might want to check it out. So she started sending me, things like 101 Things to Do in Humboldt County and
Greg's magazine.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if Greg owned it back then, but
no, probably didn't.
Yeah. I saw a thing on the map called Patrick's Point, and I said, maybe I should check that out.
Wow. Did you go to Patrick's Point then when you got here? Did you camp out?
My then wife and I put our stuff in storage and drove across the country, checking out different places. Wound up here, and within a week of being here, found a house to rent up in Big Lagoon, just north of Patrick's Point. And after about 2 months here, the guy who owned the house told me that I belonged here, and so he was going to sell me the house.
Whoa.
And
did you buy it?
I did.
When I bet that was real expensive back in that day.
1997.
Yeah. But boy, Big Lagoon is pretty up there.
Yeah.
So you were, if I remember in talking to you in the past, you were an investment banker?
Yeah, I came straight out of college up to a little country bank called Chase Manhattan. Went through their training program, became a commercial lender. Did that for 8 years.
Wow.
Went to a firm called Trust Company of the West, where I did more what they now call private equity. And so investing money in private businesses.
Wow.
And then went back to Chase and did a couple of years of international investment banking, primarily in the telecommunications and media business.
Was it still New York City?
Yes, still New York City. Though that particular stint, I was on planes about 75% of the time.
Yeah, no life.
I was in, I got to see parts of the world. I got to see Indonesia and Singapore and Iceland and London and, a number of.
From the airport?
And the Hyatt Hotel, which,
got to see some.
Are remarkably similar throughout the country, or throughout the world.
Yeah. Where'd you go to college? I've never asked that, I don't think.
Georgetown.
Okay.
Washington, D.C.
D.C.
Yeah.
Huh. Finance major?
International finance, yeah.
Wow. Okay. And then naturally to New York City to banking, yeah.
Yeah, there were like 12 of us from Georgetown who wound up in the training program at Chase. So
let me press on this for a second. So why did you decide to come to Humboldt and put all your crap in storage? And I mean, what was there something that precipitated that? You said midlife crisis.
Yeah.
Had enough of this. I'm going to try something new.
Well, it was a variety of things. It was I had been through my first divorce, and that was very traumatic to me.
Sure.
I never expected to be the type of person who would ever be divorced.
Right.
And I was unhappy. I was. And I was kind of like waking up. I was one of those things where I did really well. when I got to Wall Street. I went to Wall Street. I was 21 years old.
Wow.
I was a vice president at Chase by the time I was 26. I kept getting promoted. I never even got around to going to business school because I kept
getting promoted
and everything. And then, with the divorce, really forced me to say, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
And you started doing some particularly outward bound trips as part. I don't know how familiar you are with Outward Bound, but Outward Bound is primarily an educational program, mostly for youth. But they
it's outdoor though. It's outdoor.
It's outdoor. It's experiential education.
Love it. Yeah.
And on one of those trips, I met this woman, Jennifer Mackey, and we became friends. And I was going through my soul searching. And
nice. Yeah.
But it was time to leave. It was time to do something new. My thinking straight out of college was, I'll go to New York City for a couple of years. That'll be fun. And there I was 17 years later.
Yeah, right.
As time happens, to us.
And on the map, New York City is like 7 walls that way, the other side of the studio.
Maybe a few more on that sort of scale. Yeah,
and a dimension away in some ways in terms of culture and.
I tell people I tried to move as far away from New York and as possible and still stay in the continental United States.
Funny story. A lot of people, I think Mary Keene first got this, that many people came as far west as they could, landed in Humboldt, wound up here for a variety of reasons, variety of people, and there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah. There were also a lot of people go north. They want to stay in California, but they want to get as far away from Southern California as possible. So.
Yeah, and you can't. I guess you could live in Mendocino, but there's not much out in Fort Bragg.
Yeah, I mean, Mendocino could have been possible.
Yeah,
at the time, when I did this, I had a map of the United States and just crossed off where I did not want to live, and had a list of things that I wanted in a community. And there were certain things like a university.
Yeah.
I really wanted to live in a place that had a university. I wanted a place that had an airport so I could get out of there if I had to.
Maybe some music.
Yeah. And water. I wanted to be, somewhere near the water. This kind of fit.
Yeah, sounds good. So what did you do after you arrived, and how did you get plugged into, say, the radio world? And
well, I really spent the first couple of years trying to learn to play the guitar. I mean, that was really my primary focus. And I had a couple clients that I kept from my Wall Street days, for a short period of time. Yeah. And got involved a little bit through Humboldt Area Foundation with the development of the prosperity strategy, the economic development strategy that they did in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I met some people there. And then really the first real job I had since when I moved here. And I'd been lucky. I'd saved some money from working in New York. First job I had was running the co-op.
Okay.
They had, you might recall somewhere around 2000, 2001, they did the remodel of the Arcadis store. And that went dramatically over budget.
Right, I remember that, yeah.
And they got into some financial trouble, and the employees were angry because they had been living through jackhammers and dust and everything, and were promised all sorts of things when the remodel was over. And they finished the remodel, and the management said, "We're cutting your benefits because we're broke."
Wow.
And so the employees responded and said, "Well, we just voted in a union."
Huh.
So the board had a meeting, and somebody said, I think we need a Wall Street guy to come in here and try to straighten us out.
Wow.
And a friend of mine was at the meeting and says, I may know one.
Do you know a guy?
I may know a guy.
He's up in Big Lagoon.
Yeah. So I came in as the interim general manager.
Huh.
of the co-op and did that for about a year and a half.
I think I remember that. Yeah. So the outgoing, and then are they still a union shop?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, very much so.
Yeah, we go to church right across the street. We go over there, and
they're
great.
Catalyst.
Yeah, they do a good job.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the
and so does the co-op.
I love Bethany and Jason. They're good people.
They're great. Had her on the show. She was great.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
good. Yeah, I mean, I think when I got to the co-op, the turnover rate was 83% a year.
Jeez, really? Wow.
Yeah.
So it was a job training mill.
Well, it was. I mean,
churn it.
Yeah. I don't even know that we had time to train with that sort of turnover.
That's a lot of turnover.
Yeah, and the union has brought a lot more stability. I mean, there's people who.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's still a couple people there who remember when I was GM. Not too many at this point. Maybe a dozen.
Huh. How about that?
Well,
David Lippman, our friend, was GM after you. But.
Yeah, David. And I used to have a sort of a ritual where they would hire a new GM, and I would take them to lunch, and I would say,
"Oh, how about that?
Like, hey, here's my 2 cents of advice.
Keep the change."
Yeah. But I have not met the current GM. I hear very good things about Sean.
Yeah.
But
they seem to be doing a good job. And then Eureka. What was Eureka built? So
Eureka at that point was the Fifth and L market over by Eureka City Hall. Mm-hmm. It was a very different store in those days.
Small, yeah.
Yeah. And then it was after when we recruited Len Mayer to come in as GM, then Len was the one who built the current Eureka store.
Which is a gorgeous store.
Yeah, it is.
They do a good job. They have some African peanut soup that's super hot. So I sat with a friend there, and he's eating their soup, and he's just pouring sweat. So if you watch out for the African peanut soup.
I'll have to try it.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to it. So what happened after that? After that, there's some radio.
Well, so during that time frame, I was getting into, I've always been into music, but I really enjoyed this radio station, KHUM. I just loved their music and got to know the people involved there. And KHUM was a sort of an interesting story. It was started by Cliff and Amy Berkowitz and Jacqueline Debitz, and in 95. They started the radio station with basically no money for all intents and purposes. They had no money,
right?
And it was a startup, so it didn't go well. And they, so they were in some financial pain. But at the same time, they had miraculously gotten another license for another station.
Oh.
And so they were looking for people to put up some money to help them build the second station, take care of some of the creditors that they had. And the idea was that, having an economy of scale, operating 2 stations out of the same facility is definitely economically more viable.
Were they in Ferndale at the time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Ferndale. They were in Ferndale because Ferndale was as far north as the FCC would allow KHUM to be at that point.
How about that? Let me show you Ferndale on the map. Let's see if I can find it. Fortuna, Ferndale, right there.
Right there. Yeah. Can you find Garberville?
Garberville's way down at the bottom.
Yeah. So in those days, KHUM was a Garberville station.
Oh, how about that? Oh, yeah. I think I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's no longer licensed to Garberville, but it's at that time.
How about that?
Yeah. So the signal was on Garberville, and you have to have your office within a place that can hear the station.
Okay.
And so they were in.
And the signal doesn't travel to Garberville now, or did it then?
It gets down there. It's not as strong as it used to be down in southern Humboldt.
Yeah.
It's transmitting now off of Neal.
So these guys are kind of hurting financially a bit, and you come in and you got some
I came in
expertise.
as an investor. I put in a little bit of money. I went on the board of directors, and we got K-Slug, was what the second station became, launched, and I retired from the co-op, and got a call the day before Christmas from the general manager and said, we bounced our payroll.
Oh, no.
And I said, so how did that happen? He said, well, we ran out of money. And I said, no, I figured that much out.
Got that part. We understand that.
Yeah. How did we run out of money? And he says, I'm not sure. And I said, oh, I don't like that answer. So I went down to take a look at the books, and it was much worse than anybody was telling me.
Yeah. Don't worry, it'll get worse. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I, debated it, and I was, again, very, very much in love with KHUM and what it was. I mean, not only for the music, but for its community involvement. I mean, KHUM is a very, very special radio station. And so after thinking about it, I went to the board and said, okay, we either file bankruptcy or somebody comes up with some money. I'm willing to come up with some money, but I have two conditions. And the first one is that I get a controlling shareholder interest in it. And the second of which is we get a new general manager. And they said, well, who do you have in mind for general manager? And I said, I don't have any good ideas, so I guess it's me.
Nice.
And so I became general manager in January of 2003, and president of the board. And I've been president of the company since then. I've hired general managers over the years. You've probably met most of them.
Many, yeah. Sure.
And in the meantime, in 2005, we made a partnership with the Blue Lake Rancheria. They put up some money, and we bought a station in Fortuna that had been known as The Party.
Remember that?
Yeah. And they were broke, and so we bought that and basically rebranded as The Point. So that became our classic rock station.
Great station, yeah.
And then we, in 2010, bought the old KXGO, which for a whole variety of reasons we won't go into now, no longer exists, at least in that incarnation. I'm not sure that was a good thing. But
what are the call signs? What's the calls on that now?
Well, right now it's the Lounge. It's 94.1, the Lounge.
It's not KXGO or
no. There is a KXGO that Mad River Radio has, but it's a much weaker signal than it used to be.
Whole different deal, yeah.
Yeah. And then in 2011,
KXGO, let me interrupt real quick. We used to be Lounge, sort of relaxed. I go way back to when it was in all the dentists and doctors' offices.
Oh, wow. Before it became classic rock?
Before it was the monster of classic rock, yeah. Oh, it was, and its numbers were really good because they were in every office. Every office in Humboldt had this radio station on.
Well, the Lounge is, it's in my dentist office anyway. I don't know. But though the Lounge is not quite. It's much more upbeat, and it's far cry from the old elevator music sort of style of
Darn Amici or somebody.
Yeah, we're now more into Pink Martini and that sort of thing.
Sure. They're coming to the Brit, by the way. I just read that yesterday.
I saw Molly Tuttle and Infamous String Dusters.
That'll be a pretty good show.
The Dead South.
Yep. Jason Mraz, he's coming.
Yeah.
They already, they rarely announce a bunch of shows. So the Brit Festival is way up here.
Way up there.
It's up there in the curtain area for Jacksonville, or you know this. Talking to the camera. Tell us, why is KHUM special? What makes and made it special in terms of format's interesting, right? The involvement in the community. It's kind of an outlier in the best sense of the word. It's not what a Clear Channel station. It's real organic, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think what happened in the radio world starting in 95 and 96, and I saw this, towards the tail end of my Wall Street career, the FCC allowed, companies to own a lot more stations.
Yeah.
And what happened was they started automating and formatizing their stations, where stations started sounding the same all around the country.
Oh, yeah.
And KHUM, sort of, eschewed the idea of a format. You know, it was the original radio without the rules.
Right, right.
So, you know, you could play Frank Sinatra followed by Frank Zappa.
Right.
You know,
that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, you know, but the main thing was that it was very much involved in community activities. It did and still does the Stop the Violence campaign to promote awareness of issues around violence in our community and starting the healing. It did a lot of live broadcasts from various places. And it had an exceptional group of people. I mean, Cliff Berkowitz, who started it.
Great guy, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, really
Amy.
Mike Dronkers in those days, Larry Trask, who's now runs the lounge for us. Larry was the first guy I hired when I got there.
How about that?
Yeah, Larry's done almost every job in the company except for sales.
And that's coming, Larry.
Don't say that. He might quit on me.
You're next.
No, Larry's the guy who's helping me with the moving the facilities into Eureka.
So tell us about that. Where are you going to Eureka?
Yeah, so we've signed a lease with the support of the Blue Lake Rancheria. Blue Lake Rancheria and I have a agreement in principle that they will acquire 100% ownership of the company.
Wow.
Which I'm very thrilled about because I'm a big believer in local media. And the Rancheria can't move.
Yeah.
It has to stay here.
It's here.
Yeah. So you know, we can, you know, sort of ensure that we have local media here. You know, as I started to say, we created the Lost Coast Outpost in 2011.
Oh, right.
And that gave us, you know, a built-in news department. But the Outpost has been in Eureka for the last, I don't know, 6-7 years maybe.
Yeah.
And so so the two sides of the company have, you know, been separate, and we want to get them back
together.
Together. So so we're going to be moving into the Carson Block building, the old sort of downstairs theater space in the center of the building.
Does Rancheria have any part of that, or are they part of the?
No, the building's owned by the Northern California Indian Development.
That's a separate entity.
It's a nonprofit that is works in Native areas on Native issues.
Beautiful building, though. The remodel's gorgeous.
Well, I should give you the tour sometime.
Yeah, let's do it. I'd like that. It was a theater back in the day, right?
Yeah, William Carson built it as a theater in, I think it's the 1890s. It was a recession. He didn't want to lay off his workers, and so he built an opera house.
Wow. And it's kind of inside the building.
Yeah,
right?
well, I mean, you know, Carson was a smart guy. He, you know, he had a department store on the ground floor. He had offices on the outside of the theater.
Yeah.
And then he had a theater on the inside. And
he's got a nice little house up the street.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was walking distance.
Yeah. You could walk to work.
Yeah. You know, so it was a beautiful, beautiful building that fell into disrepair, and the Northern California Indian Development Council put together a pretty remarkable financing package, which later, when we get to Humboldt Area Foundation, I was part of the group that helped fund that. And so it's you know, it's kind of right in the heart of Old Town.
It is the heart, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, if you want to think about downtown revitalization, you know, you have to make sure that the buildings in, you know, in that area are, you know, robust, you know, that they're not run down. And,
right.
So it's
and that's a big one that would be in jeopardy if it was left in disrepair.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, they were struggling to make ends meet with it, and, you know, and it was not seismically okay.
Yeah.
So that, you know, the seismic retrofit on that is just really impressive when you see some of the steel beams.
I walked by it it seemed like they were never done. They kept working on it forever.
I think it was $17 million project.
That's great. Yeah, I know. What a great thing to have.
Yeah.
And what a great location for y'all.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's nice. It's central. And it's got nice spaces, for studios, for the Outpost, for the salespeople to come and go, and for live musicians to, come down. Back to what makes KHUM special. I mean, I think the other thing that always made KHUM special was that they would bring live musicians in the studios. And there would be sort of that live performance element.
Right. The troubadours that are coming through town.
Yeah, as well as locals.
Yeah.
KHUM's always been a big supporter of local music. And, as you and I have talked over the years, we have a very, very robust local music scene.
Oh, boy. Yeah. I talked to DeMarc a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I watched that one.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
He was brilliant. I thought he did a great job. I hope you thought so.
Yeah.
Gosh, it occurs to me you're like this builder guy that came to town and helped the co-op, and now you revitalize this radio station and build on it, and then Loco. And let's talk about Loco. A lot of people affectionately, Lost Coast Outpost is affectionately called. Do you call it Loco?
Yeah. Well, in fact, I'll tell you the story. And I'll tell you.
A lot of people might not know what it is. I think it's.
Yeah. I don't know. The Google Analytics numbers that we see,
they're pretty high, right?
We get 330,000 unique visitors a month. There's only like 120,000
in the whole county.
Adults in the county. Now, I'm a unique visitor on my phone versus on my iPad versus on my desktop. So divide the number by 3.
Yeah, still big numbers.
I think 90% of Humboldt County knows what the Lost Coast Outpost is. But it's an online newspaper. And what the story was that Hank Sims, who at the time was the editor of the North Coast Journal, had run into some conflict with the publisher, Judy Hodson. Judy brought an editor in above Hank, sort of demoting him, and Hank quit. And he called me up and said, "Meet me at the AA Bar and Grill tonight,"
which is right over here.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
that's right there on Eureka.
Yeah, right across from the courthouse. And I said, "Well, I've never been to the AA," and he said, "All the better. Good. So let's meet there.
Steak."
And so I get there and I say, "So Hank, what's up?" And he says, "I'm coming to work for you."
Huh.
And I said, I can't afford you, Hank. And he said, "Let's not let that get in the way. Let's just,
nice.
Now
who's in sales?" Hank.
And I'm like, "Well, Hank, what would we do with you?" And it happened to be the same month that America Online had paid $300 million for the Huffington Post. Which got my attention. And I was...
Which is an online newspaper.
Which is an online newspaper, and at that point, I was like, wait, what is the Huffington Post? I mean, it's just a website.
Right.
$300 million for a website, And I'd been trying to study the internet. I knew that the world was changing. I knew radio needed to adapt to it, though, online radio listening is still never really taken off as a thing. I mean, there's so many options there. And so I was like, okay, Hank, let's keep talking.
Let's do this thing.
Yeah. And I had been at a Christmas party the month before, and somebody said to me, "What's the name of your company anyway? I mean, I know what you do, but what's the name of the parent company?" And I said, "Well, it's Lost Coast Communications." And he says, "Oh, Lost Coast. What a great brand that is. I mean, can't you see it? The moment somebody says Lost Coast, you get a vision of it." He says, "You have this beautiful brand here." And I'm like, I have this brand that I don't use. I mean, because everything was labeled, we were KHUM, we were KSUG, we were The Point, like we were very much not into branding ourselves as a corporate entity. And so I said, "Okay, Hank, it has to be Lost Coast something, And then around the second beer, I was like, "How about the Lost Coast Outpost?" it kind of fits the sort of the brand, like like the edge of civilization, there,
Right.
the outpost
in the Yukon.
Yeah, exactly.
We're out here in the
Yeah,
outpost.
at the outpost. And Hank said, "Let me sleep on that." And he texts me back in the morning. He says, "I can shorten it to Loco.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it."
It's got a colloquial name that everybody can remember.
Yeah, and it is kind of fun. And so we launched the Outpost in 2011.
So it's all organic. You guys invented this thing from ground up.
I mean,
the URLs, the whole nine.
So in fairness, Hank really has invented this thing.
Okay.
Hank is the, he's the genius behind it.
But you facilitated it. You
yeah,
were
no,
part of the dream.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And Hank, doesn't like selling advertising very much, and or dealing with payroll or
most
any of that stuff.
Most of the writers.
I talked to him about this the other day, and I was like, you don't really want to deal with this stuff, do you, Hank? He's like, "No, I don't."
No, all right.
Yeah. Well, but Hank's also a very ingenious computer programmer. So one of the things about the Outpost is Hank has created all these little gadgets that can go to the sheriff's office every morning and say, "Who was arrested yesterday?"
And pull it live.
And pull that information, post it automatically. I mean, that is automated. Nobody has to do that.
There's no guy phoning in for the daily log.
Yeah, no. And if you dig into the Outpost, and I think the thing that people don't quite appreciate about the Outpost is, like all the city agendas and minutes,
court dockets,
weather reports. I mean, like what everybody else is printing. We have a whole section called Elsewhere that will tell you what Kim Kemp has posted, what the Northwest Journal has done.
Mm-hmm.
There are many in fact, I think it's if you go to the masthead and you look under it, I think it says News Gizmos. Mm-hmm. And so Hank has all these gizmos that are feeding into the Outpost that are providing it with.
So it provides you guys as the core setter to start it, and then you could
then we can add our contents to it over time, and right now we've got I believe it's 5 reporters there, plus we have the Wild Rivers Outpost for Crescent City and Brookings.
Is there a correspondent up there?
There is one correspondent up there.
Gotcha.
Well. Yeah.
So Hank had his background in Time Standard, right? Was he not an editor?
He was the editor of the North Coast Journal.
Okay.
He may have worked for the Time Standard at one point.
I thought maybe I could be wrong, but that's true.
I met him the first time I met him. I was one of the original members of the Headwaters Fund board. Mm-hmm. And Hank had just started as a reporter at the North Coast Journal. And I wasn't quite sure what to make of this guy. He reminded me a lot of the old television character Columbo.
Yeah.
He was a little bit disheveled. He had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and he's
Let me get this right.
Mr. Cleary, and he did. He came up to me after the meeting and he said, "Mr. Cleary, I just have one question, and then he asked a really hard question.
Of course.
And I'm like, oh, this guy's smart. And so that was kind of my first introduction to Hank. And so, it's really, Hank has created something that is, when you look at the changing media landscape and you look at, you used to work for newspapers.
Yeah. 20 years.
Yeah. That business has been decimated.
Oh, boy.
By the internet.
Sure. Yeah.
And, I don't know what the official circulation is of the Time Standard at this point. Yeah. That's
pretty
That's
low.
what I hear.
Yeah. Maybe it's more on Sunday.
Maybe. Yeah.
Love you guys at the Times. Love you, John.
Yeah. Well, John worked for us at Lost Coast for a while.
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. No, John was the general manager there for 3 years.
I guess I do know that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he was there for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were 26,000 circulation on Sundays.
Right? Yeah.
Jeez. We worked for the Tri-City, as you remember.
Which was part of the...
Ron Pileggi. And, but, we were 48,000 and we thought we were badass. And, they had their daily at 20,000, and now that would be enviable,
right? Yeah,
that'd be the envy of the nation. Yeah. It's like,
well, and that, I was just going to say that's not their fault. I mean, that's nationwide.
It's not their fault.
Yeah,
no.
I mean, there were 300 newspapers that went out of business last year.
Yeah, alone.
Yeah.
And we had 2 at one time with that.
Oh yeah, with the Eureka Reporter. That was a golden era of Humboldt media. Boy, I'll
tell you, man. And it was a beautiful paper.
Yeah,
it was gorgeous to look at. My boss would come from Texas. He goes, "You have 2 daily papers in this backhorse town?"
Yeah, right.
How do you do this?
Yeah, well, they were bleeding.
Yeah, both of them.
Both of them. Yeah, but you know, we did get. I was telling somebody the other day that Western Web, you know, is a beautiful printing press thanks to Rob Arkley and the Eureka Reporter.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, the newspaper business. You know, well, in fact, the story I want to tell was in 1997, the Wall Street Journal did an article on over-mediated markets. And
we are one.
Humboldt County was the most over-mediated micropolitan area in the country. More media outlets per capita than any place else in the country.
Totally believe it. Yeah.
You know, because we had all the TV stations, the radio stations.
Everywhere.
You know, we have the Ferndale Enterprise, those
10 newspapers.
Yeah, I mean, Fortuna had its own newspaper. Arcata and McKinleyville were separate newspapers back then. And,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, the Beacon, what's his name, Odell, owned 4 or 5 papers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Competitive market.
Yeah.
And we were, how would they research that? I guess there's ways to gather that data.
Yeah, I mean, well, the FCC has central data base for television and radio, so that's easy.
So per capita, we had a lot of, and plus we had other Bay Area KGO feeding in, and all that other happy horse stuff coming in. Cable was running strong back then. Bill Smolin, William F. Smolin.
Yes.
Did you ever meet him?
No, I did not. I knew his sister Carol Ann, his brother Don.
Yeah.
And I know. You know, the person who runs the Smolin Foundation now.
He was legendary, Peabody Award winner.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the first West Coast TV stations, right? Channel 3.
Yep.
KHUM. And he sold the building one day. He walked by my boss's office. He goes, "Ron, you want to buy the building?" He goes, "Yes, sir, Mr. Smolin. I'd like that." "Okay, I'll draw it up. Good day, Ron." And that's how it was done. It wasn't even a handshake. It was high five. There's no 5. Call me. Now he owns half of a city block.
Yeah.
In Eureka. So, yeah, the guy was legendary. And he was, you know, Cronkite won the Peabody. So he's in that realm. I guess he was a terrific guy, but he was old school.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Loco's become the monster in terms of, in the best sense of the word, popular, read, hit. I mean, it's bigger than, say, the Times Standard or the Journal on an online presence. It's bigger than anything.
Oh yeah,
the county.
I mean, I'll put my statistics up against any. I mean, it's bigger than
anything North State. Even I don't know.
I haven't looked at the numbers lately, but last time I looked, I think we were bigger than the Press Democrat in Santa Rosa.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. And, we actually, last year, there's an organization, a nationwide organization called I think it's the League of Independent Online Newspapers, LION.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, would you like us to come in and do an audit of the Lost Coast Outpost? And I was like, yes, please.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm like, come in and tell us what we could be doing better.
Come on down.
And, and so they spent some time with us and looked at it, and they wrote a report, and they said, you guys are the poster child for how to do local news right.
Wow.
And I was like, so what could we do better? And they said, we don't know.
How about that? Huh.
Well, I was kind of disappointed, to be honest. Come on, tell me some stuff I can work on. We can't possibly be that good.
Move to Eureka. Oh, you did.
Yeah. Well, we did.
Yeah. Combine with the radio stations.
Yeah. But the interesting thing about Lost Coast too is, KHUM has won an Edward R. Murrow Award for Best Radio Documentary. It won a National Association of Broadcasters Award for the storm coverage back in 2005.
Wow.
K-Slug has won a Radio Mercury Award for Best Public Service Announcements. I mean, the people there are incredibly talented. And, and again, like we're in market size 272 maybe out of 300 or something like that
really
in the United States.
Top 10, low 10%, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're we shouldn't be doing this well.
Yeah.
Like, the rest of the country should be doing better.
It's a good way to look at it. I'll tell you what I like about Loco is the obits.
Yes.
I don't know how he draws the data, but no one has an obit like Hank does. He does it. I'm sure some are submitted, and
almost all of them are submitted.
Yeah. Really classy. I mean, done well.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was actually something that, we kind of got into it as on a fluke, but a friend of mine's father had died, and she said, "Could you run the obit?" And so I asked Hank, and Hank said, "Well, we just, I don't want to just do one-offs. I want to have like a policy." And so we came up with well, why don't we just do it for free? Hank's criteria is you have to have lived in Humboldt County or have a memorial service in Humboldt County. So we're not getting people from Texas sending their obits.
Yeah, that's fair.
Keep it relevant locally. But after the booked section, it's the second most read section of the Outpost.
So the jail,
who got arrested last night is still number one in terms.
So he draws that's fresh hot bread every morning.
Yep.
Huh. Makes sense. I mean, that sells.
Yeah. Well, people are always
Type standard. The DUIs was a huge deal, man. When they published, they went back and forth. They would publish, then not publish, and then they'd put them back. And so what after radio? So you became president of the Humboldt Area Foundation.
Executive director of the Humboldt Area Foundation. There's actually a couple of small things in between or during simultaneous.
Oh, please,
So I was actually the interim general manager of KHSU.
Oh.
From 2008 to 2010.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure I was at that time the only person in the United States who simultaneously ran an NPR station and three commercial radio stations.
That's pretty cool.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah, you could pull it off, yeah.
But KHSU was having some challenges at that point.
Sure.
They had fired their general manager, and so I went in just to try to steady the ship a little bit.
Will they be back? They're gone. What's his name? Disassembled it several years ago, right?
The university, basically outsourced it to Capital Public Radio. They have one or two people, who produce a little bit of local programming, but it will never be what it was.
So it's just like the lumberjack football team's not coming back.
Yeah. No, I don't think so.
I would think it'd be easier to resurrect a radio station.
Well, they still own the station,
but in terms of a staffing, I guess it's a money thing.
Yeah, I think it. I mean, what Tom Jackson said when he came, is that, to some degree, there weren't a whole lot of students involved in KHSU.
It was a local endeavor in every way.
Yeah, I mean, to me, and I argued this quite a bit with Ron Richmond at the time when he was president. I said, it is your best way of letting people know what's going on at the university.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, you don't do a very good job of that.
No.
I said, there's a lot of things happening on the university, and you've got 30,000 people listening to you every week. You could be telling them, hey, we got this, classical concert. We got this,
Sure.
Guest lecturer. We've
Theater.
got we've got this sporting event. We've got all this stuff. They didn't do a very good job of that.
Yeah.
We started to get there. And then I did a brief foray into politics in 2010 and ran for county supervisor.
Kind of remember that.
Yeah, I think I knocked on your door.
You might have. How did that go for you?
Close but no cigar.
Yeah, learning experience.
Learning experience, right.
Who'd you run against?
Well, the way I like to look at it, Jill Duffy was retiring. I declared, and then a fellow named Ryan Sundberg decided to run against me.
Gotcha.
So,
gotcha.
And I got 49.3% of the vote.
Gee whiz. That's pretty good. Pretty good run.
Not bad for a guy from New York City.
Yeah, that just the walk-on that came on the football field. That's pretty good.
But having not succeeded in that endeavor, as my wife and I talk about, was a blessing in disguise because
probably, yeah.
A year and a half later, the position of executive director of Humboldt Area Foundation opened up.
Right.
And had I just been elected supervisor,
couldn't do that.
I couldn't.
Yeah.
Just bail from that.
Can't do both. Yeah.
No, and it would have looked, awful. So, so I did get hired as the executive director of the foundation. And
what does the foundation do? Explain real quick how much do they they manage a lot of money.
Yeah, so Humboldt Area Foundation is what they call a community foundation, which is basically, think of it as a amalgamation of a lot of small foundations. In order to effectively create a foundation and have the infrastructure to invest and a foundation, what they do is they take the money, they invest it, and they pay the earnings out, to do good work.
I see.
But in order to, and they can do it forever that way with that model.
Right.
They continue, you tend not to touch the original investment amount, but
so the principal remains.
Yeah. So like when I was there, I think, we had given out more than we'd ever, been given.
Sure.
And we still had, and we had a lot more money than we started.
The miracle of compound interest.
Yes, exactly.
So how, without digging too deep in it, who determines the investments? Do they have internal investors, or do they farm that out to whomever? The investment committee of the board made the final decisions or, final recommendations to the board, but we had at the time an advisor out of Los Angeles who was very, very good. And I had been, part of my why I was even remotely qualified for this job was I had sat on the investment committee and the audit committee at the foundation for a number of years before that. So I actually understood that part of it pretty well. Sure.
So there was that part of it, but then there's the much harder part of how do you give the money out effectively?
Right. To whom and where and
and obviously, the challenges that face our community are, I don't know that there's an amount of money that can solve that problem.
I don't think we don't have that much on hand.
But one of the examples that I've used of where the foundation could be really helpful is if you drive into Arcata off of Samoa Boulevard, and there's that building on the left that has the marbled muralettes painted on them, and it's it was a Humboldt Housing Corporation that built a building there basically for people who needed permanent supportive housing. Humboldt Area Foundation gave the original grant that allowed them to prepare the plans for it, after which they were able to seek, other outside funding.
Wow.
And, so that was an example of an effective use of money where we could make smaller grants to really jumpstart certain activities.
Sure.
The foundation also does a lot of college scholarships. They give out close to $1 million a year in college scholarships. They do a lot of work around, the arts, around community energy. And then, as the times changed, we started to really, start the community conversation around race and equity and some of the disparities in our community.
So how many years were you at the helm?
I was executive director for 7 years.
Wow.
From 2012 to 2019, and then I stepped down for 2 years and just ran the investment portfolio and did some of the work with donors and things like that.
Wow.
And then I, retired from there during the pandemic.
But not quite retired with Humboldt Folklife Fest.
Well,
Or did we miss something? Was there?
No.
I don't want to miss anything.
Well,
It's a big resume, folks.
well. Yeah,
So Folklife, you've been at the helm of that for a while now, right?
Well, so in 2001, before I got re-engaged in the work world, I went off to a music camp to, learn how to play the guitar. Found out I was doing it all wrong. And came back and got very passionate about music education. And at that time, I'd actually been starting a conversation with people here about, we were talking, economic development and things like that. And I still maintain, and this may still happen at some point, that one of the best economic development strategies we could have in Humboldt County would be to have another university.
Oh. Wow.
Because universities bring, they bring brains, they bring
Everything.
A lot of thoughtfulness and culture, and
So maybe a private university, smaller scale.
Yeah, and maybe a music university.
Oh.
Or music and arts.
Arts, yeah.
And wouldn't we be a good place to do that?
Wouldn't that be the perfect? Yeah.
Yeah. And so I wrote a very passionate letter to the board of the Humboldt Folklife Society, which I just found. I hadn't read it in 20 years. So I thought I was very forward at that point in time about some of my ideas. But I was like, hey, Humboldt Folklife Society, you've been around. At that point, they were around for 20 years. I mean,
they've been around a while, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I was like, you could be a great vehicle for creating a folk music university, which I would shorten to Folk U from time to time.
Wait a minute. Hey, wait. Did you catch that, Nick? Yeah. Folk U. Anyway, sorry.
I
love it.
Yeah. And so I got it, and the board kind of said, who the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
We ain't never seen you move
this young guy.
Move no chairs at the festival and things like that. So so I got involved and helped to put on the 2002 Folklife Festival. And then got really involved in that and kind of expanded it. It used to be kind of a 3-day thing.
Is it up at the Lazy J or
Lazy L?
Lazy L, Fickle Hill.
It left. Lazy L stopped in the 90s before I got here. The property had sold, but that's where the festival was for a long, long time.
Is that Craig, the repairman? He's the Glenn Campbell.
Oh, yeah, Craig Lemster's
That was
family.
his daddy.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Craig's a great guy.
Yeah, he's quite a musician.
Oh, he loves Glenn, man.
Oh, yeah.
He played with his daughter, I guess.
Yes, he still does.
Yeah. He's a nice man.
He is.
So that you've been doing this 20, I'm counting
way
20,
too long.
22
way
years.
Too long.
Yeah. Wow.
I keep trying to take a step back every year. And,
describe it real quick. So the folks
Folklife Festival. So the Humboldt Folklife Society is a very tiny nonprofit that believes that everybody should participate in music and dance, and whether that's playing an instrument, whether it's dancing, whether it's singing, whether it's enjoying the live performance.
Come to the show.
Yeah. We've put on, the Folklife Festival since the very beginning, since 1978 or whatever.
Wow.
We've done a lot of dances over the years of various types. We have produced our own shows. We don't really do that as much anymore. We do some education. We're doing a major push right now to do a lot more education.
Wow.
traditionally have done workshops at the Folk Life Festival. So if you
Which
wanted
is
to,
August?
July.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to bring your mandolin and, take some lessons.
I got to take some lessons, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we all do. I mean, it's like, the funny thing is like,
You play mandolin, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Among other instruments. Yeah. But, there's this like misconception that, some people are so talented.
And practice a lot.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's like, nobody, very few people are like just naturally talented and can pick up an instrument. Most of us need to, watch somebody else do it,
And people that got discovered, like Jimi Hendrix, he worked his ass off for
Absolutely,
years.
yeah.
It's like these guys kill themselves. Actors, same thing.
Yeah.
Couple are overnight, like Taylor Swift. No, I'm kidding.
Right.
Just kidding out there.
No,
she was not overnight. She worked
far
really
from
hard.
it. Far
She's
from
worked
it.
very hard.
Yes. And then, people like Molly Tuttle, whose dad is probably the leading instructor of folk music down in the Bay Area.
How about that?
So she grew up in a musical family.
I'm going to get tickets.
Yeah. Yeah.
They go on sale the 29th. What is today?
I think it's Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that.
With the infamous String Dusters, no less.
Yeah, that should be good.
That should be a good show.
So the Folk Life Fest coming up at Del Art in Blue Lake, California.
That we're starting to put the plans for that for mid-July. The week ending July.
Can't resist.
Yeah, you point to
Joni. I'm looking at the map. It's right here.
Point
Blue
to the
Lake.
map. Yeah,
right here by Corbell. Yeah, yeah. Blue Lake. It seems like the Del Arte would be perfect for a folk U.
We're exploring that possibility with them. Del Arte is going through a metamorphosis at this point. The original generation of the
Carlo and what a history.
And Joan Shirley and Donald Forrest have passed away recently.
Yeah.
Michael Fields is no longer involved. So they have a new leadership there. And we did a folk school there last year that was pretty successful. I was pretty happy with it. Where we taught, bluegrass guitar or harmony singing or
nice.
There was I don't know if do you know Rob Diggins at all?
Just saw him Friday night in Trinidad.
Okay, yeah.
What a nice man.
Yes, he's a brilliant musician.
What a great, he's playing the fiddle and it's jazz horns.
Yeah.
This guy's, he's off the hook.
Yeah. So, Rob emailed me right before the folk school last year and said, "Hey, I'd love to be involved." And I was like, "Great, Rob. Like, you want to teach a couple of classes?" He said, "Yeah, I'd love to." And I said, "Whatever you want to teach, Rob."
What a resource.
And so he emails me and says, "I'd like to teach East Indian ragas on the violin."
Okay, perfect.
I had my doubts, but it was a well-attended workshop.
You got to take him to the AA.
Yeah.
Talk to him.
We have such tremendous talent here in Humboldt County.
It's a whole other podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, to some extent, you and Paul DeMarc went over it a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, but there's some guy like Rod. He's amazing.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, a couple questions. What's next for you?
At this point, I'm going to try to, help Lost Coast get moved into its new facility, get the transfer to the Blue Lake Rancheria, the ownership, stay involved as a advisor if desired.
Sure.
But I really want to focus on my music. As I think I said before we started, I've been starting to record some of my original stuff finally because I've been writing songs for 20, 30 years.
Bongo Boy Studios, Jimmy Foote.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Dominic Romano.
I've heard that's a really quality studio too.
It is.
It's everything that a musician would love.
Yeah. And Dominic is a very good producer. And, I have been, I finally just said to him, I said, "Look, I'm scared to death of this. Help me." I hate the sound of my voice.
Yeah. Who doesn't?
Right. So I'm doing that. We have a couple bands. My wife and I are in both the Backseat Drivers, which is sort of an acoustic blues band, and then we have a new band called All Wheel Drive. That's more of a swing jazz band.
Nice. Hi, Kat.
Yeah, hi, Kat.
Yeah.
And then Kat and I do a duo thing. We'll be playing Easter at Moonstone Crossing Winery.
Very nice.
Easter Sunday.
Hey, thanks for coming. Appreciate you, Patrick.
All right. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.